The last time we had the Honda Civic Type R, well, we were at Clark International Raceway, wherein we brought this car around the racetrack. Now, admittedly, I let the car do more of the talking than I did, mainly because I didn't want to give this car scratches, and two, it was actually a pretty overwhelming experience. But things have calmed down a little bit, and it's time for me to do more of the talking this time around and see just how good the Civic Type R is as an all-round performance car. After all, that is what a hot hatch is all about. Now, when the FL5 first came out, one of the common sentiments was, well, it didn't look aggressive enough. I don't know about you, but I rather like it. It's a bit more cohesive this time around. When you look at the shape of this front bumper, for instance, it's more rounded, it follows the lines of the car, and moving a little further to the fenders, you don't have that tacked-on fender extension that was just, well, fiberglass or plastic. It just looks cleaner and simpler. And when you move over to the back, it no longer has that sort of tacked-on fender flare as seen in the FK8. Now, Honda was wiser this time around because with a wider track, they flared the wheel arch instead of adding that fender flare extension. And again, all in all, it just looks that whole much cleaner. And one thing I also noticed is Honda got rid of the fins right above the tailgate. That just means that Honda did enhance the car's aerodynamics because they don't have to put that thing on top anymore. But the main reason why I prefer the FL5 over the FK8 is this. Because of the hatchback's unique rear styling, you're not gonna see posers and RSs trying to look like a Type R. If you want to get a Type R, just buy a Type R. Don't need to fool people into thinking that you got the R. For those who still can't identify that this particular model is a Type R, your biggest clue is down here. Of course, it now has the signature 3 tailpipe look that started from the FK8. Okay, it doesn't have the Gundam styling of the FK8. It's perfect for people who just don't want to shout about having a high-performance car all the time. Think about this. When the EK9 first came out, it wasn't festooned with tacked-on bits or fender extensions or any of that, but it looks, well, purposeful and serious at the same time. So in terms of design at least, this is more in line with the EK9 and the EP3. But my issue isn't with the styling. My issue is with this car's size, because the FL5 is about 4.6 meters long. And for reference, that is about the size of a 90s Honda Accord. And because of its dimensions, you are going to feel that the moment you start driving it. Now, as I mentioned, there is quite a lot of car surrounding you when you drive the FL5. Now, I got yards and yards of hood in front of me. I mean, I got a bit of space here on the side too. This is a genuinely big car. If you're gonna judge it from Civics from the past, this is massive. But the thing is, when you start driving it around in city environments or like where we are now on the highway, it's a surprisingly comfortable cruiser. I am genuinely surprised just how smooth this suspension is. This is a high-performance car that rides really smoothly on, well, fairly uneven surfaces. Now, if we're gonna put it in sport mode, we're gonna feel some of the bumps, and yeah, we're starting to porpoise a little bit more. And if you put it in R+ mode, okay, we are pogoing quite a lot now. So I am going to go back to individual and leave it there. Right now my settings are my suspension's on comfort mode, but my engine is on R+ mode, even though it is pointless to go beyond that because we are doing the highway speed limits. But what if, you know, you have to take your Type R from time to time around city streets and not so perfect roads? Well, like the highway trip, I can say that around the city, the Type R is fairly comfortable. Yes, you'll feel more of the bumps and a bit of the dips and etc. But it's never uncomfortable. It actually absorbs road imperfections rather well. You are going to hear the thumps and the bumps, but you won't necessarily feel it, and it doesn't send shocks up your spine. Again, despite these huge and chunky bucket seats. And yes, while this car is a manual, as it should be, you're not gonna be worn out when you're driving around in traffic, because while the clutch is weighty, it's not exactly heavy. Honda makes one of the best manual transmissions in the business. And even the shift action is excellent, and it doesn't matter if you have a Brio or in this case a Type R, you will always have a very satisfying shift action. As for other daily stuff, well, you'll be surprised that the Type R is actually good on gas. Now, around mixed driving conditions, you can get up to 11.5, or if you're more careful, 12 kilometers per liter out of it. And out on the highway, well, if you're gentle with it, you can do about 14 to 15 kilometers per liter. Now, that's impressive for something that has 300 horsepower plus plus. Of course, no car is perfect, and there are a few things about the Type R you should know about. The quick steering rack, which is excellent on track and on winding roads, is absolutely terrible for maneuvering around tight spots. The steering lock is only about 1.5 turns, so you don't really have much movement when you have to go around in a circle. So yeah, turning radius is fairly terrible. And because of the size of this car, well, a 3-point turn is usually gonna turn into a 5-point turn or a 6-point turn. And another sort of sore point in the Civic Type R, and it's not just for the Type R, it actually applies for all the other Civics in the lineup. It's the smallish fuel tank. This one has about 42 or 43 liters. And you have a 2-liter engine, and as efficient as it can be, that tank is gonna get dried up in no time. So I would have wished that Honda fit in a larger fuel tank in the Civic, not just in the Type R, but generally for the Civic, just to make the most of that efficient engine and increase its range. Also, the Type R has a little less sound deadening, so it's a little bit louder inside compared to the more comfort-oriented and pedestrian models. But because this is still a Civic at the end of the day, it is hugely practical. Now, you got loads of cubby spaces, it's got good AC, it's got wireless charging, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, etc, etc. And the interior ergonomics are, as always in a Honda, pretty good. It also has a pretty good cargo area. It's actually sizable and in some ways comparable to the Honda HR-V. Wait, let me correct myself. It's actually bigger than the Honda HR-V's cargo space. So if you're trying to justify to your significant other that you're getting one of these, you can say that, hey, the cargo area can fit more than enough groceries. These days, performance cars have more duality, they have more of a daily friendliness to them, and that's what the Civic Type R exactly is. Now, in terms of daily ability, the Type R ranks way up high there, and if you do bring it on a track, it is absolutely fantastic. Now, granted, some of the old schoolers might not like the electronic power steering of the F05, but that's the reality these days. Just about every performance car out there has an electronic power steering system. So to sum up the Civic Type R, well, let's take a look at the pros first. And definitely it scores high on the daily ability and the duality of all of that. Number 2 is, of course, the performance. And I'm not just talking about the engine here. I'm talking about the dynamics and the overall capability of the car. Not just on the road, but also on the track. And really, if you're gonna get one of these cars, please, at least once a year, bring it to a racetrack. Otherwise, you're just wasting this car's abilities. Number 3 would be the surprising practicality. If you're gonna look at the Type R, it's got a decent sized trunk, you got cubby holders, it's got all the modern amenities you'd expect from, well, a car from today. As for downsides, well, to be honest, it's few and far between. There's the maneuverability, the limited turning circle, and the smallish fuel tank capacity. But other than that, if you're talking about a dailyable, trackable car that you can use no matter where you go except for off-road probably, then the Civic Type R scores highly. And because of that, we're gonna give this car a perfect 10.